Hey guys, and welcome back to the Outer Rim. I'm Gabe Green, and today, with the help of my fellow admins, I will be talking about the latest and, for now, final episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian. With me is James, who we can't see because I don't know why. He hates us probably or something. Hey.
Hello.
And also Drew, who also hates us, which maybe it's just me. Well, anyway, everyone probably hates me or something. Is that why this is
This is
happening?
true. This is
Okay.
true.
Makes sense. All right, so we are talking about Chapter 16, The Rescue. This one was written by Jon Favreau and directed by Peyton Reed, who is awesome. And yeah, so what do you think, chaps? Start with you, James. How'd you like this one?
I really liked it a lot. I thought it did the thing that I really liked about the first season, which is, uh, we've met a different cast of characters as we go on, and like the last episode or two is kind of mustering all the troops that we've met over the course of the season, and so here having Cara Dune and Bo Katan and Boba and Fennec, like I just bringing everybody together for like this last big epic showdown with everybody. Uh, just in terms of the action and everybody who is involved with stuff, that aspect I found really satisfying. As well as like the big reveals that we don't know exactly what to expect except to expect some sort of crazy way they're going to end it, and on that front I was also satisfied. So I really enjoyed it, and I think this season, Peyton Reed is behind only Rick Famuyiwa for me for like my favorite direction.
Yeah.
And so I thought, just in terms of the technical aspects, there was a lot to really enjoy here.
Yeah, going into this, I was getting a little worried that maybe I had overhyped him from The Passenger, which for a while was my favorite episode this season. I was like, what if that was just a fluke and it's actually really mediocre? I would have to eat some serious crow. But no, he's awesome still. If anything, he completely surpassed the excellent work he did in that episode. Drew, what'd you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that Jill said. It was a really awesome episode that both delivered in the direction and also just the emotional weight. That's something that I wasn't really expecting to feel. Like, because we've talked in the past before how, despite the show being really solid, like it's an amazing show in my opinion, um, the emotional weight isn't always the strongest suit in the show, but
Mm-hmm.
by the end of the episode, I really just I ended up tearing up. Like I wasn't expecting that. So
What is this
kudos to
water in
them.
my eyes? I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah. Um.
Yeah. Brown
So yeah.
eyes and
Overall,
his
I
tears.
yeah. Overall, I really liked the episode. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about it.
Yeah, so let's save the talk about that Jedi towards the end of the episode and just kind of go through what we get up until then. Yes, it's all just really fun, solid stuff. The action, we get this awesome standoff between Cara Dune and yet another fanatical Imperial. I'm getting the feeling that they're really trying to show us that anyone who is now left after the Battle of Endor and the Battle of Jakku, these are the fanatical true believers. You got like Werner Herzog, Gideon, Valen Hess, and now pilot number one. These they really really believe in the Empire. Like everyone else, either surrendered or deserted. It's just the crazies now that are left now, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and something that I really liked was, and I don't know if if there's anything canon. I'm sure there's probably something in books. Um, but I liked that the Death Star was there Alderaan. Like him talking
Yeah.
about all the lives lost there. The fact that like you've got all of the silly, like the Empire was right. The rebellion is terrorist, like that ridiculous crowd. But I do like that we get to see those ideas in him of like we were a base with millions of people, and terrorists blew it up, and
Mm-hmm.
Alderaan was a price we were willing to pay to stop this terrorism. Like hearing that side to me is really cool. Kind of like, I guess world building would be the right word of just or of fleshing out the other side, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
another
really,
book. Oh, go ahead.
well, just in a weird way, kind of as much of a like a horrible little monster this guy was, and still kind of humanizing them to an extent.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
something that the books have been able to do really well. The Lost Stars and the a certain point of view uh, books, they're really able to just give us that kind of ground level perspective on the Imperial grunts, and the Death Star is something that comes up quite often.
Yeah.
Um, and then we go to meet Bo-Katan. And was anyone else thinking of like the oil fields of Texas as they were flying
Yep.
over that planet?
Honestly.
Yeah, it was cool. And I feel like Favs might be trolling us at this point. I remember after the which was the tragedy episode, and we got all these like jubilant posts and videos, confirmed Boba Fett is a Mandalorian, and then we were like, you're no Mandalorian. Never said I was. Like, what are you doing, dude? You can't keep doing this to us.
I love it.
Yeah, it's and like it makes sense. Like this direction they're taking it actually makes the most sense, I think. Aside from the Boba Fett killed a Mandalorian, I mean Jango killed a Mandalorian and stole his armor theory. It makes sense, but it is just funny, like all the stress they're putting these fans through. Who like I don't care that much either way. Like Boba Fett, he's fun. I don't have any emotional investment in him, but there are a lot of people
Yeah.
who apparently do have a lot of investment in him being a Mandalorian. So I guess they're saying that for a foundling, they can be a Mandalorian if they accept the creed, but if not, then they're just a dude with armor or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
the life that Boba Fett's living right now.
That's kind of what I've gathered from it. But also a really interesting thing to note about that part. Um, this whole season we're led to believe that Bo-Katan has the best interest in the Mandalorian people, wanting to gather them all together. And seeing her say that to Boba was a really interesting take, because this whole time we're led to believe like she wants to unite them all together, but it kind of seems like she's like no better than anyone else in a way. Like it was almost like she was hypocritical
I mean,
by how she was acting, in my
she's an
opinion.
extremist. She rode with Death Watch for a while.
Yeah.
She's calmed down a bit, but she's an extreme nationalist by any standard. And a thought came to me of like, why do Mandalorians hate Jango Fett so much? Like both Death Watch and like Satine's pacifists, they don't like him, and I think he's like maybe they hate him for selling Mandalorian superiority for the mass production of like these soulless drones as they probably view the clones. Like it's like a slight on, they're obsessed with lineage and creeds. I wonder if like
Yeah.
that's some kind of crime and slight against their own rather Nazi-ish view of their own superiority.
I
It
never
could be an
even thought
interesting
about
place
that with
to
the
take it.
clones. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I think she like seems so like both Almec and her seem very pissed off at him. Also, I really like to see her kind of just playing the leader. She treats Mando with respect, but also she speaks to him as if like with the assumption that he's one of her subjects, like a queen or maybe even a duchess. And like she just carries that authority with her whenever she's talking to a fellow Mandalorian. That was pretty cool.
Hmm.
I like how Boba just calls her princess.
Yeah.
Just keep your shields up,
Honestly,
princess.
honestly, that whole scene was just great. I love the banter between them.
Mhm.
And the line that Bo-Katan had where she's like, "Oh, I've heard your voice before, like 1,000 times before," and I'm just like, man, that
Don't
you
you
don't
mean
want to
your
piss off
donor?
Boba. Like, come on now.
Yeah. Then we move on to the light cruiser, and the TIE Fighter launch tube was super cool. I love how it's been decades where we've seen this ship, but they're still giving us like unique angles and views, and then the functions of these ships that we've seen so many times. It's awesome how like when they bring on new guys, they can just find these angles to look at it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like whenever we get to see like the mechanics of the way these things work, and seeing them almost come off that like assembly line looking thing, like the way they dock and the way they would leave with those like the way the tracks kind of zoom or pull them out there and they go down the tube. It's just like you said, like we've seen this aesthetically, it all looks really cool, and I'm sure aesthetic comes first here. But it is cool whenever like we're like, oh well, this thing that also looks cool, like this is why this is actually the docking bay, this is how they come out, this is how they load them back in. Like seeing seeing the practicality in ways that make sense with these awesome designs that we've loved for so long is just a cool thing, like you said, to continue to see.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I gotta continue praising Peyton Reed's direction. And I think like the running hallway fight that they have here with the four ladies running through killing everybody, like I think it's an example of what a director brings. I remember kind of criticizing both the Aris and the Siege for this because it was just like, oh, running through hallways shooting stormtroopers. And this is still running through hallways shooting stormtroopers, but like when you have a director like him, he's able to just make it all so much more interesting and just add these little touches like one of the Mandos was roping a stormtrooper and pulling him forward, and the other one flying forward and giving him like a jetpack kick. Like,
Yeah.
it just constantly spicing it up and giving us different angles, and like it's so making it more interesting than the previous ones where it was just like, oh, they run through, oh, stormtroopers, shoot them, oh, more stormtroopers, shoot them. Like he's constantly spicing it up.
Definitely.
Did you have anything to say about that whole sequence? Like it was fun, but it was probably the least interesting aspect of the episode for me.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, good.
Oh, I'll let you go.
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, I definitely agree. I like seeing how constantly with the action in this episode, he always had something new to spice up each scene. Like you were mentioning with the hallway, with like the flying kick part, or whenever they got to the bridge, with the I don't know what you'd call it, whatever that like exiting part of the bottom of the ship was.
Oh yeah.
Where they're on the bridge, not the like ship, the bridge of the ship, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that
like
little
that
catwalk thing.
yeah, the little catwalk thing. Like it was really cool how like, oh, Bo-Katan and the other Mando, they jumped down and like waited for the rest of the stormtroopers to walk up, and then they jetpack back up and like killed the rest of them. So they were just like constantly throwing something new, or like when Cara Dune's gun got jammed, and so she just like ran up to the stormtroopers and started bashing them in with it.
Another funny little moment after in that when she's in the elevator, she bangs it, and then she like swings it over Fennec and like, "Excuse me," it's just a duck. As like in this tight elevator, it was just a funny little moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even beyond just like the actual physical things they're doing to differentiate it with like having these little action moments to spice the scenes up, besides just like here's a static shot of them shooting towards the camera, here's a reverse shot of stormtroopers getting shot, like even beyond just adding additional action, like actions taken to that, the camera work itself, I prefer to, especially to the examples you brought up, Gabe, that maybe weren't the greatest examples of hallway fighting and shooting and stuff. It's just like that there was a sense of movement to the camera and a sense of momentum here,
mhm.
um,
And
that I think a lot of the times these other episodes lack, because it really does just feel like static shot reverse shots of like they just showed up and shot a whole lot of coverage of both sides shooting at each other, like just shooting towards the camera in a way where like you could really kind of cut and recut that footage any way you would want, because there's rarely any like action follow-up action, here's the thing, here's the consequence, and here the camera just, it feels way more involved in the action, to where like it's not just splicing together a lot of coverage, it's like the camera is involved in the action and the follow-through in ways where like it just, the edit, like it all just it follows through way better, I think.
Yeah, and the cross cutting helps a lot. We're cutting to Mando's got his own side mission, and cutting to the bridge with Gideon watching. Like it's it's that cutting back, so it's not one thing too long to lose the momentum.
Yeah.
Then there's the Dark Troopers, who they were pretty cool. They were cool in the trashes, but they didn't do much. I love these guys, and I wasn't expecting to get all that much out of them. Like, oh, more droids, but this is another aspect where I think Reed's direction really shines. There's another big aspect we'll talk about later on, but for now, and that is like, if you asked me to describe his style, I wouldn't really know what to say. Like, it's just really sturdy, really tight, and like similar to FAMU was, it's just he knows what this moment, this second needs, and how to fit this second into the next second. Like he just knows what each moment needs and how to execute it, and just the way he keeps cutting back to the Dark Troopers getting more and more powered up, and the steam and the ice and everything. It's just he just knows how to build the tension for reveal, and the building of tension has been something that I think has been lacking in a lot of episodes, be it like Filoni's or Bryce Dallas Howard's. Like they're both promising filmmakers, I mean, or live action directors, but I've criticized a distinct lack of tension in how they direct. It feels like they just kind of move through everything. Like everything is shot. It's all, they capture everything that's necessary, but they're lacking that spice of just the intercutting, and to allow a moment or an action or the build up of dread for these Dark Troopers to really just get into our blood. It's the difference between what makes like a good fan film and what makes actual cinema. I think is just the ability to know when to let a moment breathe for a half a beat longer, to get it into just to make the audience feel it on an instinctual level.
Mm-hmm.
And also just another thing I loved. I remember I was getting, like, when I first watched it the night it came out, I was getting serious Terminator vibes with the Dark Troopers, and on the rewatch I realized it's because there is a slight stop motion jitter to how they move, which was bringing me back to the way, like, in the first Terminator, it was like actually a stop motion. But I can't think of another robot that has been this, like, just disturbing and scary. Like, we've had a lot of killer robots, but the way he did it, where they feel so heavy and they don't move like a single millimeter more than they need to accomplish this purpose. Like, every single movement is so measured and precise, and there's none of just like the natural freeness. Like, a lot of robots in film are motion captured, so they have like a more organic movement because they're people inside, and they have weight, and there's momentum, and there's there's that little bit of movement as you're stopping and starting, whereas there's none of that with these guys. There's something along with that jitter. There's something so completely unnatural and like unholy about how they move. There's nothing organic about it, and it's just disturbing on kind of a guttural level.
Yeah. Another thing that like really added into that Terminator vibe was the way that their like armor clanked. Like it sounded so much that like that classic Terminator metal sound that we're so used to hearing. So I really appreciated that aspect, and I guarantee they were like, yeah, let's make these guys like Terminators.
Yeah, I love. Oh, go ahead.
I was just say we're covering the Terminator on franchise fatigue right now, so I just in time got this reference point, and as they're coming out, especially as he's pinning him to the wall, I'm like, oh, this is absolutely a Terminator.
It's just the way they punch is like so weird and terrifying.
Yeah, like, and it's similar, not in a, I mean, in a, I guess technically in somewhat of a derivative way, but that like has such a negative connotation. I don't even like using it here because I still feel like these things have their own cool identities within Star Wars now that I really like. And yeah, like that, just in terms of the execution of them, the things that really stuck out to me were the weight and the movement. Like, these things felt heavy. Like, I just imagine, like, this thing lands on your foot and like that's it. It feels like these are massive, heavy pieces of machinery. And yeah, you were talking about like the precision of their movement, as as he's punching the helmet into the wall, it doesn't even feel like an action scene where like one guy has the other guy pinned and he's punching him in the face. It feels like a guy's caught under a piston, more like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just this perfect, you pull back, like that perfect straight line forward, rinse and repeat. And because of that, it's also like what we talked about whenever we're talking about the first Terminator, and that part of what makes it so scary is the lack of humanity behind it. And so I think whenever you're robbing it of the movement you'd get in like human joints and the way an arm would flow or turn and think, like if all of that is gone and it is just like it's human in vague, in like in this shape, it's got two arms and two legs, so it's human enough to where we'd associate it with that, but it is just this very cold, mechanical, unstoppable kind of thing. Like we fought droids throughout this series as long as it's been a thing, and
Yeah.
now droids are scary again.
Yeah, and like when they make them so scary that when Gideon delivers his line, like in a moment, everyone except for me and the child will be dead. We believe it despite having just seen these people take out an entire, Imperial cruiser full of stormtroopers without even breaking a sweat. We still believe that they're doomed. And speaking of Gideon, we get an awesome scene with him. Um, like Giancarlo Esposito is he is one of just like the great villain actors of our time. Just Gus Fring, is obviously one of the greats, and the way his diction as he just chews through these lines. I don't know if English is his first language. I believe he's American. But he speaks as in at least in this show, he speaks as if it isn't. So he has that like perfect diction, like he's been speaking it for a long time, so he knows how to. And it's just like it's just the way he chews on his words is so fun for me to listen to.
Yeah, there's just like this, everything he says feels like it's said with such intention. Like he's like, I'm gonna hold this word for this long and say this thing in just this way. Like this thing I'll say will be just this sharp, and I'll stop just right. Like I don't know. It feels like I don't know, not like rehearsed, but like this. I don't know, he's got such a command of his own speech in a way. Like where everything he's saying is exactly what he wants to say and exactly how he wants to say it, and I don't know. It gives him such a commanding presence.
Yeah. His line delivery is incredible. Like even though we don't even know that much about Moff Gideon yet, he's already just an awesome villain, and like this was the first episode where we really, really got to see him. Um, but even though we haven't seen him a huge amount, like just his presence is incredible, and the way, like you were saying, like with his voice and like the way he delivers the lines, it just gives him like almost this really like academic feel, or like almost like a way where like he just seems like very intellectual and intelligent, and
A friendly piece of advice: assume I know everything.
And I believe it.
the best way I can like compare him to something, or like think of someone else like that in Star Wars, is probably Thrawn. They both have like this really just they have their way with words, I guess.
And they're also really scared of Jedi.
Yeah.
I like, no offense, I love you, Dave Filoni, but this is how you shoot a saber duel. Like the step up between the one in the Jedi and this one is so massive. Just little touches like the way the saber gets the spear gets red hot when it's up against the dark saber. And that brings us to our favorite badass Mando moment, and mine is when he kicks the spear with his heel and then brings it over, to come down on Gideon again. Like, it was such a cool move.
Oh, that was so awesome.
Drew, what would your favorite moment from him be?
Gosh. I was gonna say that. Honestly, yeah, I can't even. I guess like this isn't really a badass moment, but when he took off his helmet for Grogu at the end, oh man, that really got me in the feels. And like obviously, I was already getting in the feels seeing Luke on screen, but I was like the whole time I was just like, please take off the helmet for Grogu, just please take it off. And he does, and then you see Grogu's little hand touch his face, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah. How about you, James?
Yeah, so in terms of my favorite for him as a character, it's that same one because you know the seeing him take it off for Grogu, like to save Grogu before, was a lot, and that really got me thinking about how much I wanted him to take it off, like take the helmet off right in front of Grogu, so that Grogu can see him. Just because we've got that other moment where he's taking it up just enough to take a sip of what he has. So I feel like this has really been building to this intimate moment between them.
Yeah.
But we're talking about just like the coolest moment. The image of the door opening and Mando walking in holding the dark saber and just dragging Gideon on the floor.
Oh yeah.
Like that's a BA right there.
Yeah. But going back to Gideon, I didn't realize this the first time, but like he talks so much. Like there's so much like really awkward exposition. Like he just goes on and on telling you every single little detail of everything ever. But the moment where he's like, it brings power. Whoever wields this sword has the right to lay claim to the throne, to the Mandalorian throne. And like when he's in the jail cell, like he's already in that moment trying to tempt Mando to take it for himself. To bring him into conflict with Bo-Katan and undermine her revolution from the inside. He's always calculating and trying to, throw in dissensions, which he does later on to lesser effect, I think, where he's like whispering over their shoulders like worm tongue or something, like about how they all need to fight each other now. But yeah, it was pretty cool in that moment, just seeing how even though he's pretending to be reasonable, he's always got an angle. Yeah, so that brings us to the big thing in this episode that most people are talking about. So pretty much the moment the Dark Troopers flow back in and they close the blast doors, I was like, okay, what's going to happen is they're going to be in the inside, hear them punching, and then we're going to hear a lightsaber going off, and the door's going to open, and whichever Jedi is going to be there. Like I was totally, and then when when the X-Wing came out, I was like, oh, Luke, whoa, they're playing the big guns. Like that like I was not surprised that a Jedi showed up, but I was surprised that they went with Luke for the Mandalorian. Like it just seemed like it seemed like out of this show's league.
Yep.
To bring him in.
I mean, oh,
well,
we're just gonna keep cutting each other off this whole time.
I was just gonna say, like, I hope that I don't have any comments. I have to go back and. I hope it's all just been things that I've been thinking in my head, but every time people like in speculation bring up Luke, I'm like, guys, you are dreaming. This is the Mandalorian. We are not gonna see Luke. So the fact that it was him, I was like, oh wow. Like I guess I gotta either actually apologize people or just be glad that I kept all this to myself.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Luke, from the moment Ahsoka told him, he's going to call it to a Jedi, Luke, we all knew Luke was the most logical choice within, this era of history, but it was always like, but Mark Hamill's old. So like it kind of seemed unlikely on that front.
Yeah.
But and there's there's been a lot of people complaining on Twitter and in Star Wars fandom about how it's the Mandalorian has just devolved into mindless fan service, and you can with Ahsoka and as particularly Boba Fett, sure, like there's a bit of unnecessary fan service, but this and for a lot of people were acting like Luke Skywalker showing up was the final nail in the coffin of the Mandalorian. It's just fan service. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not storytelling, but. That's not what this is. Like,
no,
a Jedi in the finale of season 1, the armor said, you're going to bring him to his people or to the Jedi. And the entire season, he's been going around, where are the Jedi? Where are the Jedi? Are you the Jedi? Can you take him? Like, everything has been leading up to a Jedi showing up. So when a Jedi shows up, that's not fan service. That's called payoff. It's storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I don't get why is a complaint, because even though like some of this has been like basically fan service, it's never overtaken or overshadowed what we get in this story.
Mhm.
Like Luke coming at the end of the episode, sure, you could call it fan service if you wanted to, but it never overshadowed the goal that Din accomplished. Like, you know,
Or even Boba, who's the most egregious example. Even he, what does he do? He gets recruited into protecting Baby Yoda. Like, there,
yep.
Mando. Well, the Jedi's a little different. That one's like Ahsoka. It's a little different, but for that one, like, they just get recruited into Mando's story. Like, he's not getting sucked into theirs usually.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of is because but those are more like the side quest, cowboy bounty hunter type episodes. But just this is what I wish Filoni did for Ahsoka. Like, I just compare these two scenes where, like, with Ahsoka, like, the first shot we see her face, reveals over, now it's just hacking and slashing. Whereas Reed he just played this sequence like a symphony with just the hooded figure, the green lightsaber, then the metal hand. Like, he just, these little reveals peppered in. The moment we saw the X-Wing, we knew it was Luke Skywalker, but what you know doesn't matter. Like, reveals in film aren't always about what you know. They're about getting our feelings and emotions involved. Like, that's why you can rewatch things, and reveals can be just as cool, second, third, fifth times. And it's so, the whole sequence is so beautifully done, and the music, I like that it was quiet. It felt there was an epicness to it, that the chorus in there, but it was also like serene. It felt like a Jedi in tune with the Force doing his thing. I love every single thing about Luke until he pulls off his hood, but we'll talk about that later. How did y'all feel about that entire sequence leading up to his actual reveal in the end? Drew.
Yeah, so when I saw the X-Wing, I was like, no way. There's no way. And then like we saw a hooded figure, and for a second I thought, oh wait, it's just Ahsoka again. Because the way like the cloak was shaped and everything, that they did it in such a way like where they were looking through the camera of the ship, where it's like, okay, it probably isn't Luke. Like, it's not happening. But as soon as I saw like the dark cloak and his like robes and everything, I knew immediately like it was Luke. And it was such a surreal experience. And like you're saying, the way the score was used in this part, it was like it was like this weird contrast of like the intense, almost dubsteppy kind of synth stuff that we got from the Dark Troopers theme, while like this really like peaceful kind of like Jedi theme plays over that, and it like was this really nice contrast of like, oh, like there's this sense of danger, but like everything's at peace now because we have this like awesome force wielder, this amazing like Jedi hero just coming to save the day. And like he's just super calm when he like walks in there and just slices down all these droids. Like it was super awesome seeing that. And also it was really cool that Luke got a hallway scene to contrast Darth Vader. Like, in Rogue One, we get this crazy Darth Vader scene where he's mowing everyone down, but it's with the intent to, kill everyone. Whereas, like, Luke is coming in to mow everyone down, but he's saving everyone. It was just like a really nice contrast that I noticed.
Mm-hmm. James?
Yeah, so I unfortunately had this spoiled for me.
Uh,
I was trying to avoid Facebook, but later in the day is like because unfortunately, like if I'm just sitting there, my default thing is to grab my phone and pull it open. Um, and so I wasn't seeking out Star Wars things or anything. I was just scrolling, and there was a spoiler post in a group, and they had done all their work there and saying like they had everything spoiler needs to stay here. But the top comment in it
mm,
didn't have like the all of the stars to hide it below. So as I was scrolling, I caught out at like the corner of my eye, and it's just because I'm so like when you put these letters next to each other, they just I don't have to actually read it. I just my brain knows what that means, and so I just saw Luke, and I'm like, no, no, like it had. Just, I was, it's like okay, fine, it's him. I wish that I didn't know this, and I was like almost in shock. And I had to wait like 4 hours after that before I could watch it. So the whole time I'm just like, I need to watch this. I need this in front of my eyes right now. But what's funny is whenever it came up and like the X-wing showed up, I almost like not. It wasn't as if I forgot it, but I almost went into like a mode of apprehension, like, well, surely not actually. And so like the X-wing lands and the hood's walking through. I'm like, it is Luke, right? Is it? And so I was almost back into that. Like I'm just holding on to every new little bit, and even though I technically knew it, when the green saber comes into frame, like just chills. Um, and I hadn't actually thought about so I had seen a lot of the Vader hallway comparisons, and what's funny is I've seen it both in a positive and negative way. People have been like, "Oh, this is awesome. We get another cool hallway scene," and other people have been like, "Well, this is just derivative of what they already had because it worked." And I just thought it was cool. Like it's a cool Jedi chopping down thing. Like we don't have to, not everything has to be proof of why Mandalorian isn't. I don't know. I think people are doing a bit too much reaching to try to prove how derivative it is. Um, but I
Yeah.
actually, now that you say it, I actually really like that comparison because in in Rogue One, it is shot like a horror scene. You know, like just the lighting, the music, the
Hmm.
tension, and like the horror in their faces and stuff. And it's basically like this machine chopping down people. And this is the reverse of that. It's a person chopping down these mechanical things, and like you said, the music is so serene, and it's everything is happening with this confidence, like almost like a nobility to even just movement. I don't know if that's just me projecting because I know it's Luke, but it really did feel like we're watching this absolute master walk through this, and it's not scary. It's just like amazing to see. And personally, I really loved the music choice they had with him and his entrance and everything. And you know, I'm
it's
sure people who hated The Last Jedi really ate this up, but you know, I love The Last Jedi and I ate this up as well. And part of what I liked is one, I mean, I think it works well with, you know, like Luke said, he bought into his own hype. You know, he became Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master, a legend, and you know, this confirms that. Like he is this just, you know, this master walking through here. But you know, his entrance with this serene music, it really took me back to the projection of Luke entering the scene in The Last Jedi, in which it's not this big rousing score. It's this quiet, mystical kind of sound, and I think both of these scenes actually work super well together.
well,
Yeah.
you kind of stole what I was going to say next, and I can't take full credit for noticing this. I gotta credit the guys over at the Force Center podcast, which is the best Star Wars podcast I've ever heard. But yeah, the idea that this is like the way they shoot this, where almost half of it, I think, is shown from the perspective of our heroes watching on the security screens, and like so it's like they, and by extension we the audience, are getting just a glimpse into the legend of Luke Skywalker. And so many people on on Twitter, Star Wars fans and fans of the Last Jedi have been attacking this scene as, and both people who love the Last Jedi and people who hate the Last Jedi have been either praising or attacking this scene as a total repudiation of what Luke Skywalker was. People like, this is what Luke Skywalker should be. Or people like, oh my gosh, now Luke Skywalker is just a mindless killing machine like the fanboys wanted. Like, both sides are either loving or hating on this scene, by as a way to defend or hate the Last Jedi. But I think both are wrong. And that is because The Last Jedi is an examination of the legend of Luke Skywalker, of his legendary status, of, he became the legend, he became the hero, and whether or not that thing was good for the galaxy. But do you know what you need in order to deconstruct something? You need the thing to exist. Luke was a legend at some point in time, and in order for The Last Jedi to work, he must be a legend. Like, full stop. So, like, sequences like this and other things that show off the power and majesty of Luke Skywalker in his prime, they must exist for the Last Jedi to work. So, that examination in The Last Jedi of the deconstruction, is a legend even good? Like, is this like robbing individual people of their ability to fight for themselves? Like, all of that requires the mythic figure, and so we have the examination, and finally the affirmation of, yes, we need the legend. Like, sometimes we need legends. In this moment, Mando and Team Mando, they needed a legend to come save them, and it can have ill effects, as they show in The Last Jedi, but ultimately the legend of Luke Skywalker is a good thing, which is, we get the deconstruction of The Last Jedi and then the final resurrection and reaffirmation of the legend. But here, at this point, we're just getting an affirmation of what we're told in The Last Jedi. I was Luke Skywalker, a legend. And so it's not a contradiction of The Last Jedi. Like, just because people who hate The Last Jedi liked it doesn't mean... Like, if you look at it more deeply, if you look at the history, the lore of Star Wars, this is necessary.
Yeah, and the thing is, even as somebody who really loves The Last Jedi and spends way too much of their time defending it, what I often find, like, I feel like people who hate it miss the nuance because they're like, oh, Last Jedi is only about, destroying the past and all of this. I'm like, well, there's so much. A villain said that, and pre-redeemed Luke is saying these. Like, it's you're missing all of the nuance in what it's actually saying. But like, with scenes like this, I feel like we're seeing that even a lot of the people who love The Last Jedi are missing a lot of its nuance because they're seeing all, like, Luke in action here, and they're like, well, this was not what any of it was about. Like, now we're just seeing, like, this is a repudiation of his return in The Last Jedi. Like, instead of him not really being there and just, being a projection, like, this is what we wanted. Like, they want to create that legend, even though, and then you'll hear them almost get to the point of saying, like, the whole point was that kind of legend was bad. I'm like, well, no, because it was all about reinstituting and, like, to some effect, that same legendary status, because the ending scene is of these children retelling Luke's great last stand. Like, you can hear, even though they're speaking a different language, like, you hear the
Jedi Master.
Yeah. Like, this, he's a legend again, and it cannot be interpreted as anything other than positive, than this beacon for the galaxy. And so, I think, and with this only being 5 years after Return of the Jedi, I don't think that we had to, try to create, like, for the sake of still working with Last Jedi, we didn't have to create this kind of pompous, full of himself Luke. Like, Luke was still great, and it was because of his greatness that there was, that legend was created around him, and then he kind of bought into his own hype. But I think we're at a point in time where we can absolutely celebrate the legend that Luke became without feeling like we're somehow contradicting or undermining The Last Jedi. I was talking to a friend who's mixed on on Luke here. He didn't hate it, but didn't really love it, and is more afraid of what they may do with this precedence with Luke, and and was using the fact that a lot of people are really going to love this. A lot of people that we disagree with are really going to love this.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm just thinking like, if they eat this up, whatever, like that's not really a concern of mine. I'm on board with what they showed here, and I think like unless that this timeline just leads up right to the Last Jedi and then somehow splits off to an alt timeline, like I'm going to enjoy both of these things because I really do feel like they can coexist.
Yeah, like if you've been
Yep.
watching these reviews, you know that I am as resistant as anyone to like a lot of the overpraise the show has been getting. But we can't become like partisan fans. We like we're with two camps. Like it's all Star Wars, and some of it's bad, and we can call it out. Like the Rise of Skywalker does things that it shouldn't have done, but we shouldn't just make enemies for the sake of it. And like this works. Like if you pay attention, if you read what's being said there, it works. It does. It's not a contradiction. You don't have to just hate it because other people like it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Drew already kind of touched on that final scene with Luke and Baby Yoda, and it's wonderful. And it's funny, like I'm so torn on Luke Skywalker because we've praised everything up till now, but holy hell, that thing is terrible. Like the face, the CGI double is so freaking bad. It's like there were moments where I thought it looked like a cutscene from Battlefront 2. And the longer you look at it, the longer he's there, with the way he speaks, his lips barely move, and they don't at all match what he's saying. The hair, like what is going on with that? Like, I hate it. It's not good. Mark Hamill did a great job recreating his voice, but this was a mistake. They should have recast, and it plays into the stage in a scene where he just stands there awkwardly. He barely even talks to them. Like, you just waded into a battlefield. Don't you have any questions? Like there's like no natural. The interaction is so stiff and inhuman because they're nervous about the technology. And looking back to like Tarkin, like that effect has its problems, but they weren't afraid of it. They just shot him like every other person. He had these like great interactions and conversations with a Krennic, and it like even if you weren't looking, if you were just listening, it felt natural, and the staging felt natural. Here, the whole thing it's just artificial and awkward, and I wish they recast. It would have been such a much more effective choice.
Yeah, I still really wish they would have cast Sebastian Stan. I'd imagine maybe they thought about it because I know there's been a huge outcry of fans who want
busy.
that. Yeah, he's probably busy with something if I had to guess. So I don't know. I'm willing to look past the CGI though because everything else we got with Luke was just incredible.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of like not liking the effect. I there were moments for me where I'm like I'm kind of surprised that it's looking like this, and I know that there's definitely people who disagree. Like for a lot of people, the CGI did work, and like I can't say no, it didn't work for you because if they're there, so like no, it worked in the moment. That's fine for me. I really. Again, it looked like somebody kind of slapped a deep fake on something just through their own computer. It took me aback whenever he took the hood off, but what I love that really brought me back in was when he started talking, because I was like I was hesitant about like if it already looks off, if this doesn't sound right, then this moment's really gonna not work. But I thought that it sounded exactly like what a little bit after Return of the Jedi Mark Hamill would sound like. Like I thought Mark Hamill, like finding out it was him, I thought he just nailed it. It felt like he went into a time machine to me.
Yeah.
And so even though I do agree, like he walks into the room and he stands there, he doesn't take a step when he gets into the room. He's there, and I think part of that does. Like there's part of that you can chalk up to just there's something noble about his stature. Like he just walks in and he is this pillar of calmness there. I think that works. But like you said, I do think that if they had the freedom to move around in the scene without worrying about what it's going to do to the effect, there would be conversation. It wouldn't just be, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to save this little baby and train him, see you later. Like it would be a scene written with legitimate dialogue, or maybe it wouldn't. Favreau doesn't always write these incredible scenes of just people being people. But all that to say, I think even though the effect itself looked off, it's still it's still Mark Hamill that I'm seeing. It's just kind of a weird looking version of it,
Polar Express,
but it sounds exactly like him. And I do like seeing this, like the composure he has. I think it fits a post Return of the Jedi Luke, and so despite that, and I'm actually not sure where I stand in terms of this or recasting, because it's one thing to go from animation to live action with recasting, but within live action, recasting is one of my least favorite things of all time. I hate going between sequels and seeing different people. It in a way, like my favorite, I want to get lost in movies and I want full immersion, and this definitely breaks some of that immersion for sure. But to me, what does even more is whenever it's just a different person and a different voice. It's like, oh yeah, this is an actor. Like recasting to me is almost the fourth wall break of saying, well, we couldn't get this person, so we got a different guy. But it's supposed to be that same guy that you know. So I'm still not even sure where I stand on that. I think I might still, I don't know. I would probably especially be more in favor of digital over recast if it had a bigger budget and they were able to just get the effect down more. Because I don't know. I really like Tarkin and Rogue One, despite the fact that it's CGI. But
or better examples would be Michael Douglas and Ant-Man, another Peyton Reed movie, or who plays Ego? What's his name?
Oh,
Kurt Russell.
Yeah, Kurt Russell in Guardians 2. Those are like, it can be done, although I don't know, like Mark Hamill is so different. I don't know that de-aging would work. Like Kurt Russell, he's very well preserved. Samuel Jackson, like Mark Hamill looks like a different person now than he did at this time. Like you'd have to start from scratch, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think what ultimately makes that scene work, horrifying monstrosity aside, is the scene is about Grogu, and I actually said his name instead of Baby Yoda. I hate myself. And Mando. It's about the two characters, and we get that beautiful scene where it's just the close-ups of their faces and the tears in Mando's eyes, and I can't take it because and when he's like hugging his shin, and he doesn't go until R2 comes in and comforts him. It's just it's so beautiful and heartbreaking. And I did not believe I didn't think they were gonna write Grogu out of the show, but it happened, and it's wild.
Yeah.
So I want to hold off on any, because there's so much speculation that can be done on what this ending means because I think it's going to turn into an entirely new show for season 3. We're going to hold off on that. We're going to have a massive end of season roundtable spectacular with all the admins together. So we don't need to talk about the Boba Fett tease either. Like we'll talk about all of that in the next episode or the next video we put out. But yeah, very solid ending for this season. I think like for the first half it was pretty comparable to season 1. I think then they just it really found its stride, and it changed from that serial bounty hunter cowboy show to something much bigger and more ambitious. So I think that transition was pretty smooth in my opinion.
Definitely.
So any other? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing I would say, just before we completely move on, is I did want to talk a little bit about that last moment with Grogu and Mando, because I've also been a bit critical of this show and how it sometimes uses characters and events in ways that are very much like this one's for the fans. It's like you can do that every so often, but if every episode I feel like I'm hearing this one's for the fans, then I'm like, okay. But man, what this moment did for me is show that, uh, yes, all of that's there, and I also can't divorce myself from the fandom. I am a fan, and so I it, I'm shaking my fist with one hand, and then I'm like I'm eating this up in the other. I really do enjoy a lot of the more blatant fan servicey stuff. But what this moment showed me was that what a huge reason why I've just continued to stick with the show and continue to watch it week after week and really enjoy it is is this relationship they have built with Grogu and Din. Um, like we've had 2 years now of just going on adventures and fun romps with these people. Like it's it's such a cozy show, like which is a weird term, but to me it's like it's Friday night because I would usually have to wait until after work, and so for me it's like it's Friday night, time to grab a blanket and just sit on the couch and go on another adventure with Mando and Baby Yoda. Like it was such a fun ride, and it's almost like I didn't realize how attached I really was becoming to both of them and their dynamic. Like it's easy to see Grogu and be like, oh, this thing is adorable. I'm here for it. I don't want anything bad to happen to it. But it became even more than this, than just like that immediate kind of surface level of like this thing's adorable and I want it protected. Into like when it reached out and touched his face and had to walk away, like I'm like, ah, man, my fun little father and son adventures are gone, and I got legitimately emotional. And I still think that beyond all of this, very Star Wars aesthetic, Star Wars pleasing kind of show, like there really is a core here that is worth engaging with and is worth putting in the time for. So
Yeah.
this ending and that moment specifically really like reaffirmed why I ultimately really enjoy the show.
Yeah, I think it's like fairy tale storytelling. Like there's no real sophistication to it. Like when you're reading like Grimm's fairy tales, they're very simple, basic stories, but they're still good stories. And aside from like The Believer, there's often very little deeper or sophisticated going on under the surface. But like simple can still be good, and like it's just very broad archetypes, but they're archetypes for a reason. And when the moment came off, like I do have problems occasionally with how shallow the show can be, but it's definitely not soulless, and like to characterize it as that would be very unfair, because there is a strong, very sturdy, old fashioned core there with, as you said, with Grogu and Din. All right, anything else before you wrap up?
I think I'm good.
Oh,
I guess the last thing is that it's gonna be a really long wait for the next season or whatever we're getting.
I think we got Star Wars Visions coming out sometime next year.
And Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, that too. Eee.
Ooh,
Still gonna
Bad
be a
Batch,
long wait.
man. I'm hyped.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video. We will see you again on with our Roundtable Spectacular, where we're going to talk about the entire season. Then go over and join us in the Outer Rim, a Star Wars group on Facebook. It's dedicated to positive and constructive Star Wars discussion. We're having a blast over there with all the Mando stuff and discussing what the future of the show can be like. Yes, so we will see you again in a week or two with our next video. Bye.